Welcome to the studios of Wisconsin Rapids Community Media. My name is Milt Van Natta. I'll be acting as your host today as we visit with Shawn Becker. Shawn is the Republican candidate for Wood County Sheriff, and that election is coming up early in November, and we're going to be having a conversation today with Shawn so that you can get to know him and be an informed voter in November. Welcome to our conversation today, Shawn.
Thanks for having me.
So, one of the things you've been doing now through the primary season and for many weeks and months is getting yourself familiar with the people of Wood County, introducing yourself. Just do that for us now. Give us that,
Sure.
that basic background.
Sure. I'm Shawn Becker. I've been with the Wood County Sheriff's Department almost 22 years. I've had approximately 25 years of law enforcement experience. Started with Wood County in 1997 as a patrol deputy. And then from there, throughout my career, I worked my way up the ranks. I was a shift commander, accident reconstructionist, got on our special response team, and then my first leadership promotion was patrol sergeant, where I oversaw one of our shifts. And from there, I was promoted to investigator sergeant, where I spent 5 years of my career. I learned a lot, investigated numerous crimes, whether burglaries, drug investigations, identity theft, all the way up to homicides.
Wow.
So a very important part of my career. I learned a lot, learned how to work with other law enforcement agencies.
Yeah.
A lot of those cases, they affect not only just our agency, but other ones. And then about 8 years ago, I got the opportunity to become an administrator, put in for a promotion, and I was promoted to patrol captain, well, actually patrol lieutenant at the time, where my responsibilities were overseeing the entire patrol division, our special response team, our K-9 units, and just a lot of administrative responsibilities. And we had a restructure in our department a few years ago where I was promoted again to patrol captain with the same responsibilities. Also a big part of our special response team. As I mentioned earlier, I started out as a negotiator and then got on our entry team and was assistant team leader, and now I oversee the team. So I've had various levels of leadership at the Sheriff's Department. Love my career. Married. My wife Julie and I have been married for 27 years. We have 2 kids, 2 children. Jordan, 26 years old, she works for the Special Olympics based out of the Wausau area, and our youngest, Caitlin, just a recent graduate from University of Wisconsin in Madison, and she's looking to get into social work. She's now working on her graduate degree.
Awesome. Given all that, Shawn, here's the pertinent question, and it's the why question. To run for any office as important as Wood County Sheriff is requires an amazing amount of time, energy, money, commitment. So why did you jump in now?
Last December, we had an idea that our current sheriff, Tom Riker, was going to retire and he wasn't going to seek a re-election. So the first conversation that I had was with my wife, Julie. Last December we sat down and we discussed it. Where does this fit in our life? I knew where it fit, in my career path, but what was more important was family. And where does this fit? Just based on the reasons that you said, the financial commitment, the time. And it fit very well with us. Both of our, as I mentioned, our children are in their 20s. One is done with school. The other one is a recent graduate. I knew with that time commitment, it wasn't going to take away a lot of time from them, and they can help. So we had that serious discussion, weighed out the pros and cons, and felt for our family life and our lives, it fit. And I had her permission, and if I didn't have that support at home, there was no way that I would have gotten involved with this. All right. So that was the first step and the biggest one. Then the second step is, where did this fit, professionally in my career? And as I mentioned before, you look at all the levels of leadership that I've had within the department, what is that next step? And I feel, or we feel, the sheriff position is that next step. How to move the department forward, and keep, taking on the initiatives that we've been doing, especially in the division that I oversee that revolves a lot around mental health. Those things I want to push forward and work towards those goals that we have, with our department moving forward.
One of the unique aspects, at least from my perspective, about the sheriff's race is it's partisan. We have a Republican primary and Republican candidate, Democrat primary, Democrat candidate. Why is the sheriff's office in a partisan position, and what influence do you think that will have upon your execution of the duties?
Good question. I've been asked that numerous times, and I really don't have a good answer besides it's part of the political process. Now, as far as executing the duties as sheriff or as a law enforcement officer, it shouldn't influence, and it won't influence me, or I wouldn't expect it out of any of our deputies either on what party you fall and support. You have to be impartial when you enforce the law.
So, one perspective, Shawn, on the primary season was the traditional insider versus outsider. So it seems as if we had two people associated with the Wood County Sheriff's Department that won those primaries, and now you and John Hiller are facing off in the general election. What are the advantages to having experience with the department to bring to the sheriff's office?
Well, all the levels of leadership, like I spoke, at different times of my career. I took the time to obviously be a patrol deputy. I was a training officer, being part of the special response team, being an investigator, and now administrator. You bring all those experiences together, it just builds you up to learn and learn and get those experiences, what it takes to become the sheriff. There was an outsider that was in part of the primary, and then you had our jail captain Ted Ashbeck also part, and then John Hiller worked for us for 20 years. He retired almost 2 years ago, so he knows what is at the department.
So if I tear a corner of the paper off here and give you my pen, and I say, what are your top 2 or 3 priorities on day one, the things that you're thinking about now? I win that election and I begin in the office. These are the things that I've got to get to work at. What's on your list, Shawn?
Number one is mental health. First and foremost, with the experience as an administrator, I've really seen, especially in the last 4 years, a lot of changes come in how we train our officers. And we need to train our officers better in how to handle mental health calls of service. And we've been doing that. When we had some changes with our human services and our crisis division over at human services, things changed on how we handle mental health calls of service. And I agree with this. Not everybody has to be committed to a mental health hospital when they're having some sort of an issue. All right. But like 4 or 5 years ago, it was a little different, where the deputies and law enforcement officers had more of a say. Now we don't. We just provide information to crisis, and then they make determination whether or not person is safety planned or they're committed to a mental hospital. It's really, we provide the information and they make the decision and move forward from there. A lot of officers struggled with that. A lot of our deputies did. One in particular was coming in my office probably every other day with like, hey, I don't agree with what crisis did, and it became somewhat redundant, but it's like, all right, how do we fix this? And then working with crisis, like, all right, here's the struggle. What do you suggest we should change on this? And lo and behold, came up a training opportunity for our deputies called Crisis Intervention Training, and it's called CIT. And so this one officer, who I won't name, I don't think he'd mind, but we sent him first. And he went over to the Appleton area, where it's one of the areas in the forefront of the mental health training for law enforcement. And he came back when the light bulb just went off, and he had a lot of great ideas of, hey, we need to send every deputy this, and this is why. And then he really understood a lot of these calls of service, which we have quite a few of them, and was able to now work with crisis to help people out, provide the services they need. Like I said, not every single person that is having an issue needs to be committed, but we can do some other things for them and hook them up with some services that either the county provides or we can find somebody else that can provide them. So the goal was, after seeing the success with this particular deputy, is, all right, now we need to train every deputy in this. That was my goal. If this deputy believes in this much and is communicating that well with our crisis staff, this is going to be something that I know that is going to be very beneficial not only to law enforcement but the community as well. Basically, part of this training is, it gets you to recognize, some mental health issues or illnesses, whether it's depression, bipolar, schizophrenia, all sorts of mental health issues. You learn to not diagnose it, but recognize it. And then there's ways to de-escalate that situation, get the information, and then help that person. Right? It's just like another form of community policing that, I obviously strongly believe in. So that initiative that we've been doing on the patrol side of things needs to happen in our jail. Okay, our corrections officers need to have this training, and I'm very happy to say that we've got something scheduled in February for our corrections staff for the similar training. Because if you look at our jail population, a high percentage of them, I would say probably over 80% of them are seeking either mental health treatment or a counselor, or they have some sort of addiction. So our corrections officers getting this similar training are going to be able to recognize that type of issue that inmate might be having, and they can communicate that with our mental health provider in our jail. So we can start to provide that person with whether it's some AODA services or just a sitting down with our mental health provider to help them. So that's probably, I could talk a lot about that. I don't want to ignore, that we have other issues in our community, but I see that our jail is going to be a big focus and should be a big focus, because that not only, with the mental health concerns that we have, but our jail in itself. Our jail was remodeled in 1988 with a capacity of around 130 inmates. We're way beyond that. We, right now, contract 75 inmates per year with Waupaca County. We've been doing that for numerous years, and now we're going to put another 25 in Adams County next year, so that's 100 inmates. So we have to look at, all right, what is the best way to address our jail concerns and move forward? All right, building a new jail, you can look at the need is there, and it has been for quite some time, but the public has to understand what that cost is. And I won't campaign on building a new jail, and I'll tell you why. That's up to the voters, because you're talking a $50+ million project that the sheriff can't say, we're going to do this, right? As sheriff, you don't have the power to tax people. County board does, but the sheriff doesn't. So I can make that recommendation that, hey, we need a new jail, but that's going to be up to the voters, need to be informed. Okay, why do we need it? Sure, jail population, we have over 100 inmates that we are, having go at different jails, within our county, or within the area. But then you have to look at the cost of that. With the contracts we have with these other counties, like Waupaca County, it's cheaper to have an inmate there than to house them in our own facility. And the same with Adams County. People don't know that. So once you work in a contract with another county, you look at, okay, what is the best economical solution for us, so it doesn't cost us so much money, like the taxpayers so much money. So people have to be aware of that. There's some changes, like I said, that we need to make in our jail, our current jail, that need to be addressed right away as sheriff. Like I said, training our staff. I really want to get our corrections staff into the crisis intervention training. We're very fortunate now to have a mental health provider back in our jail. We have for the last couple months. I know that that program's working. We're looking to expand that into more AODA counseling, because, like I mentioned, a lot of our inmates have addiction problems, and we really have to start focusing on that. Once an inmate comes into our facility, whatever crime that they committed, we can do better by providing these mental health services for them, so that they can be successful once they, are returned to the community. And they're forced into sobriety, which is a good thing, but that's only one piece of breaking that addiction cycle. Now let's give them some mental health, services, some AODA counseling, and we're working on that. We're looking at some grants to expand our mental health services back in the jail. So a lot of this is revolving around mental health and in our jail, but that is the first thing that we need to address. And as sheriff, and what I have been doing, talking to corrections staff, what are the issues back here, and the two common things that come up. Number one, mental health for the inmates, and we're addressing that. And number two, staffing. All right, and I understand that. All right, but I want to bring it back to the correction staff and the leaders back there. Well, how do you want to fix that? You work back here. All right, what kind of changes do you want to make? If staffing is a concern, well then, okay, how do we fix it? Do we need a new schedule? Do we need to restructure? All right. I am not in favor of pulling deputies off the road. All right. That's the division that I run or I oversee, and I don't see shorting the community a law enforcement officer out on the street to put them in the jail. The numbers have not changed that much in our jail as far as corrections staff, so let's look at, okay, what do we need to do to fix the staffing concerns that the jail has? And I feel that those best ideas are going to come from the people that work back there.
Shawn, is that the biggest change that you've encountered in 25 years in law enforcement, is the having to have professionals who are equipped to deal with mental health issues? Is that the biggest change?
Oh, without a doubt. Like I said, about 5 years ago, when things changed on commitments, I was overseeing the road, but I wasn't like boots on the ground. I was just overseeing it, and then listening to and seeing the changes and how do we adapt to them. And that's when mental health just started to rise up as far as my eyes, as a law enforcement officer. And then you look at addiction, the drug addiction, and mental health and drug addiction are so connected, and they work simultaneously together. Somebody that's addicted to a substance, why are they? In my opinion, it's probably revolves some way down the line of a mental health concern that they were dealing with that drove them into using.
So, from your perspective, inside of law enforcement, what is the scope of the drug problem in Wood County, and what impact is it having on the Wood County Sheriff's Department?
Sure. Well, the scope I look at as addiction, right? Addiction, and then the demand for whatever drug or substance that person's addicted to. And in law enforcement, throughout my career, what I've seen are trends, and trends do change. When I started, like I said, almost 25 years ago, the trends were marijuana, and those have been pretty consistent throughout my career. But then you had cocaine and crack cocaine, and crack cocaine was the more addictive drug back then. But then you saw the trends change. You saw them change towards heroin and methamphetamine, meth, and that's really what we are seeing right now. Meth is probably on the rise more than heroin, but those are the trends. And what we can do is, number one, as law enforcement officers, identify them, get out in the community and educate the community so you know what's out there. If you see some issues, you can report it, or if you're having issues, how can we help you? What direction can we help you out? Not that you're in custody at that time, but you can come to us and we can still provide options for you through human services. So as far as the scope, it really, in my opinion, revolves around addiction and then identifying those trends. And then once the trends are identified, then you need to work with your other law enforcement agencies. A drug investigation isn't exclusive just to the Sheriff's Department. A lot of that you have to work with other law enforcement agencies, and you need to do very thorough investigations that you can forward to your district attorney's office to appropriately charge a drug dealer, so they can hold that person accountable that comes to our communities and deals drugs for profit and walks away. Well, once we can catch them, do a thorough investigation, and those are the people that need to be held accountable. And then what's unique about the Sheriff's Department is like what I mentioned, the jail. There's no secret that a lot of our inmates, a high percent of them, are dealing with addiction problems. And where we can make the biggest impact is going back to mental health. They're forced into sobriety. They're going to return to our communities. These inmates will, after they've done their time, they're going to return. Now, where we can be better is providing mental health services revolving around addiction.
Let's talk technology. Let's talk in a couple of different ways. The first of which is what technology does today's patrol officer and jailer need to do their job as well as they can? What's out there that it's almost a prerequisite now to do your job well?
Well, it's a great question because technology is always changing and it's expensive, right? So you need to be fiscally responsible when you're budgeting to say, okay, what are the department needs? What is it to make our law enforcement officers the best that they can be and safe? And when I took over, like I said, almost 8 years ago, one of the initiatives that I put up, I wanted to move forward was on having every squad car having a video camera in it. All right, I look at that as very important. It gives number one transparency. If somebody wants to come in and view footage of an interaction that we had with the public, if we can release it under the open records laws, we will. But it throws out that transparency component. And number two, it helped out with providing that footage to our district attorney's office when somebody is charged with a crime, whether it be something along the lines of drunk driving. All that footage is there, and then if that goes to a trial, you can show that to a jury. So I felt those were two big reasons why I felt that we should do that. When I was on the road, we had the big, really squad video cameras. I had one, but they were very selective. Not everybody had them. But I strongly felt that every squad car should have a video camera. But I knew that there was going to be a cost associated with that. So as an administration, we came together and we made it work. And those kind of initiatives we continued. The next thing that we have is body cameras. A couple of years now, we're the first law enforcement agency within the county to implement body cameras for not only all of our patrol deputies, but our investigators have them as well. And that falls in what I said, transparency. Now you're seeing from what the deputy or that law enforcement officer is seeing, a person seeing that. And then again, it also shows, our district attorney's office, another angle of footage of what we can do to help, go forward with prosecuting a case. We also, all of our squad cars are GPS'd. A couple of reasons for that. First and foremost, officer safety. If somebody's not, dispatch is not seen, or they're seeing a squad car and they can't talk to them via radio, well, we can send people to go see them. And the other part is efficiency. If a call to service comes in, dispatch just looks up on the screen and sees where, that deputy is, and the closest deputy will go to that call. So those are initiatives that will keep taking and moving forward as your next sheriff. You have to look at technology. You have to make sure it fits within your budget and move forward. You need to provide outstanding law enforcement services to the public. Now with their jail, we're talking about possibly having body cameras with our corrections officers, so people are seeing what the corrections officer is seeing. That is the hardest job at the sheriff's department, is being a corrections officer. It is a very hard job. You're very busy and you have a ton of responsibilities. And that's just the thought that we've had. Okay, why not have body cameras? And where does that fit in our budget? Can we get them back there? And I believe it's something we should move forward on.
What is the role of the body cameras and the squad car cameras, Shawn, in relation to, we see the sensational stuff on the television news, and sometimes it creates a public relations problem for law enforcement agencies. It's almost become a necessity now, just from that standpoint as well, hasn't it?
Yes, I would agree. But we are ahead of that, before all of, the issues. If you see an officer, a law enforcement officer make a mistake, it's on video, then it's sensationalized. And people want to believe that's the way all law enforcement officers, and I obviously strongly disagree with that. But we looked at that years ago, like I said, going back to the transparency part. Hey, we're doing this already. Our deputies are expected to be professional and polite when they have interactions with the public, and the majority of their shift is on video. All of our interactions with the public, it's on video. So nothing has changed as far as their mindset. When you're dealing with the public, they're polite, they're professional. I truly believe in our patrol deputies. I love working with them and for them, and the camera system, they're used to. We've been having it, like I said, it's been about 7 years since we've had the squad cameras, the video cameras, and now the body cameras we've been doing for over 2 years.
What are the unique challenges that Wood County presents? You've got a large city in the north, a large city in the south, large mile after mile of open rural areas all around there. What are the unique challenges of the department because of that geography?
Well, we do have a north office, in Marshfield, and that we always have at least 2 deputies 24 hours a day scheduled out of, and sometimes more depending on who's working our shift. And I don't think everybody knows that.
Right.
We also have a full-time investigator that works out of our north office as well, so handling certain crimes or most of the crimes that happen on the north side of the county. So we do, with that geographical challenge, we do accommodate the best we can. And I've alluded to it already before, all of our squad cars have GPSs in them. So we do have dividing lines on patrol duties, but if whoever is closest to a call to service, they're expected to go. And dispatch sees that. They see it right on the screen, and they'll send whoever's closest to that. So we're doing our best. If we have 4 deputies on, 5, 6, or 7 on whatever shift that might be, it's a lot of area to cover. And certain areas, both either north or south squads will cover. But I believe we do the best that we can.
Okay. How will you work to bring all the different municipal departments together, whether it's a small town with 1 part-time officer or a large municipal, Marshfield, Wisconsin Rapids staff? How are you going to work and bring those groups together?
Well, do what I've always been doing. I've mentioned it before. I've been pretty fortunate, especially my investigative experience, where it brings you, working with other law enforcement agencies, because those investigations, touch them, or they're part of, that jurisdiction. So having that, collaborative leadership approach is what's most important to have as a sheriff. You're not the person calling the shots for every municipality. You're working with all the other law enforcement agencies, whether they're large or small. And I've proven that over my career, whether it's being a deputy, investigator, and even administrator. I've always thought of, how does this impact, this decision will impact not only the sheriff's department, but other law enforcement agencies as well. So having those open lines of communication and working with the other law enforcement agencies, as I have in the past, is what I'll continue to do.
How would you assess, Shawn, the county's level of preparedness for a crisis situation? Something happens in a school, those type of situations. Tell me about your assessment of the preparedness of the county to deal with something that we don't even want to think about.
Right. Well, with the strong, relationships that we've established amongst our law enforcement agencies, I'm very comfortable. I hope it never happens, but if we have a large-scale incident, like a shooting, a school shooting, or a shooting at a place of business, the expectation is everybody's going. It doesn't matter what color uniform that you're wearing, everybody's going. And another part of that is that particular situation, we're all trained the same. We're all trained on how to respond to a situation like that. Active shooter, it doesn't matter, like I said, what uniform you wear. Whoever's closest, the expectation is go in there and take care of the situation and do it as quick as possible, or more people are going to get hurt. But that caveat of working together that we've been doing for so many years and trained together will continue. I really feel comfortable if a major incident would happen, you're going to have so much cooperation amongst law enforcement to keep the safety in mind of the community is the main goal.
Okay. What have you learned during the campaign? I mean, meeting the people of the county, certainly there have been some surprises along the way. You've had an event and you've gone home and said, well, I didn't expect to hear that tonight. What are the things that you didn't expect to hear, but you have heard from the citizens of the county?
Going door to door and meeting with people, the themes have been very common. What I was somewhat surprised on, when I talk about mental health, the agreement, and you hear about the drug issues, and we do have drug issues, and I'm not ignoring that. But as I speak with people, how mental health kind of overtakes that a bit, and it's like, that just confirms what we've been talking about and what our thoughts and what we've been doing at the Sheriff's Department. So we're going to make a difference.
Okay. Can you share a couple of other common themes that you've heard from people as you've talked with voters?
That's the biggest. Those are probably the two biggest things. As of recent, the jail has become somewhat of a topic of like, do we need a new jail? How do we look at the issues in the jail as far as suicides? People have brought that up, and I've addressed that with like I said you earlier, the jail, if you think we need a new jail, you have to understand what the cost is, and number two, if you still feel that that's something that's important that we move forward on, then you should talk to your county board supervisor and let them know, hey, I really feel strongly that we need to build a new jail, and this is why. It's not just because we had a couple of incidences back there, but there's some more other ideas that I think that we need a new jail. So that's probably another recent topic that's come up more is our jail.
Okay. What would you say to the citizens of the county in relation to how can they support the department? How can it be a two-way relationship between a citizen and the Wood County Sheriff's Department?
They can come to the Sheriff's Department anytime and they want just to come in and be positive, and we get this out in the community all the time where people come, hey, thank you for your service. And you see that more and more, and what's very rewarding for me in that handshake is you see what's on the media and something negative that is, they're showing a law enforcement officer or trying to portray all law enforcement, like that. And not everybody believes that. And that makes me believe in my career when somebody comes up and just shakes my hand and says, thank you, appreciate your service.
Okay. Shawn, take a look at that camera right over there. And just one-on-one with the voters of Wood County as to why they should vote for you in November.
Well, I'm the best candidate, and I fall back on my experience with the Wood County Sheriff's Department. I've been at several different levels of leadership. I started as a deputy. I worked my way through the ranks, and this is the next step. I want to move the department forward. I want to take on the challenges that we're facing. Like I talked quite a bit about throughout this interview about mental health. I believe that is where we're going to make the biggest impact for you as voters as we move forward. We will address the drug problem. We'll work collaboratively with other law enforcement agencies. And I can guarantee we'll be fiscally responsible. The voters deserve somebody to stay within their budget, and I've proven that since I've been an administrator.
Okay. Thank you for stopping in and visiting with us today.
Appreciate the time.
Shawn Becker is the Republican candidate for Wood County Sheriff, facing off against John Hiller in the general election in November. And we're so glad that he stopped in today. We're so glad that you decided to watch this program so that you might be an informed voter on Election Day. My name is Milt Van Natta. I'd like to thank you for joining us and invite you to continue to watch these type of programs right here on Wisconsin Rapids Community Media.